I'm going to use my camp voice because this one isn't working. I am glad that you are here today. This is a wonderful worship day. And as we've been singing these songs and listening, we have so much to be thankful for. And in the process of coming together, we have a special speaker today that I've got to know for just a few moments, and we're going to get to know a little bit more about today. Josh Herndon and his wife Shannon and his daughter Karis are here. Let's welcome them this morning. Josh and Shannon are missionaries to Romania, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that today. And so let's celebrate and enjoy what God has put on his heart as he shares with us today.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for inviting us to be a part of your service this morning. I don't know if you were part of that invitation process, and if you weren't, well then now you know someone has more power than you do. And now that I'm up here, it's already too late. I try to put my family behind me. Everywhere we go, we try to take a family picture so we can remember that we were there in that place together. And after we take that picture, my wife always says, well, now it's time for a good picture. And I know that's my cue to get out and take a picture of the three of them. I don't know if you're going to be able to see them. You see them down here, but this is what they look like. I think they love this picture, so I'm sure they're glad that it's there. My son is not with us. He is with his grandparents down in Shelbyville, Indiana, and attending church with them this morning, just enjoying some of that grandparent time. If you think about it, I want you to pray for my children. We have been on home assignment since the middle of January. Came back early in order to apply for Italian visas, which we got fairly early, which means that for the last 4 months, it has been the four of us trapped in a vehicle as we have traveled clear across the United States now twice. We're pretty great parents, so that's not why you need to remember my kids. You need to remember them because, unfortunately, they've spent considerable time with Shannon's parents over in the state of Oregon. And I want you to know that I feel terrible about that. After 4 years of serving in Transylvania, I bring them home, and once again, they're stuck with a blood-sucking monster. That's not the worst thing you're going to hear today. A lot has changed for our family since the last time we were home back in 2019. It's a lot of members of our family have joined us on the mission field. Well, they haven't joined us. I mean, they're not like with us. Well, they're with us. They're not dead. I'll start over. Members of our family have also become missionaries with the Church of the Nazarene. Shannon's parents, my in-laws, after 40 years of pastoral ministry, felt like God was bringing them into a second chapter of their life. And they wanted to come over and serve with us. At that time, we were serving in the country of Greece, and they decided they wanted to serve with us. But as World Mission heard that they had 40 years of pastoral ministry, and my father-in-law had a doctoral degree, they figured there was a better place for them quite a bit further away from where we were living. They were sent over to the country of Sri Lanka, an island nation just off the coast of India. So this story had a great beginning. But then as we moved from Greece to Romania, they decided they wanted to live much closer to us. So they moved from Sri Lanka to the country of Bulgaria. And that's what we call a plot twist or a crisis moment in our narrative. Just living just south of us, my mother-in-law was invited to the U.S. for a wedding because someone still likes her. I'm just kidding. It's family. It doesn't count. The weekend that she came over for that wedding, the entire world shut down. That was the weekend of the pandemic, of the quarantine. She was stuck over in the state of Texas, months and months, 6,300 miles away from us in the country of Romania and her husband in Bulgaria, which is what happens when Shannon's dad and I pray the same prayer. They were separated for about a third of a month, which I can only imagine was not long enough. The result of that is that they have now retired from the mission field. So what used to be a 6-hour drive to get them is back to being a 15-hour flight. I tell you that to let you know that things in the world are improving. My sister and her husband are also missionaries in the Church of the Nazarene and have been serving in the country of Equatorial Guinea. And if you don't know where that is, that's okay. They don't know either. They unfortunately have also decided to move much closer to us. I don't want to give you the wrong impression that we don't want family with us. It's just that, well, no, that's it. They're moving from Africa to Europe to the country of Luxembourg. If you don't know where Luxembourg is, that's okay. They don't know either. It will now be a 12-hour drive from where they will be moving to where we will be moving to in the northern part of Italy. And halfway for both of us is a Swiss chocolate factory. So now instead of pretending to be happy to see each other, we'll have something that will actually make us happy if or when we do meet in the middle. We have a table out there that we want you to take a look at. Some things from the country that we have been living in and things from the country that we will soon be calling home. So if you have never seen or touched anything from Transylvania, this is your opportunity to do so. Vampiric viruses are a lot less dangerous than COVID-19, and it is quite possible those items have both. One of those viruses will help you live forever, and the other, well, just choose wisely. We have some things out there that we are selling in the northern part of Transylvania, in the town of Sigmandru. Our pastor has a sewing group with women in that village, and they make Romanian dolls. Now, in the past, all of the dolls have looked exactly like this because they know what we Americans think, that all Romanians look alike. Well, we decided to help you out. Now we have dolls with different hair colors, different eye colors, made with love by our Nazarene sisters thousands of miles away and by the blood, sweat, and tears of people that we love very much. More blood than sweat and tears because, well, that's how we roll in Dracula's homeland. We are selling these for 1 for $15, 2 for $25. Now, in the past, I have had Dracula dolls, and I was told that they would be making no more of those. Making the Dracula dolls got me in trouble with our mission team, and they told me there would be no more. Probably because they heard that I was coming back and selling them for $6.66. If you do want a Dracula doll, let me know, and I will pass on word that there is a group that wants nothing more than a plush doll of the Dark Lord himself. I would love to give that message from one Nazarene to another. Also, we have spoons and forks, handmade there in Florence, Italy, hand-painted as well. So if you want something that will help everything taste like pizza, this won't help, but they're for sale out there as well. Also, do you pray for your missionaries? For the 6 of you who do, we have prayer cards out there. Feel free to grab one. You will see in the main picture there is a celebration that our family is doing here. We made them extra big this year to cover up those missionaries you no longer pray for. And from the sounds of it, that shouldn't be too difficult of a task. Also, we are saying goodbye to the second prettiest member of our team. If you don't know who the prettiest is, then you haven't been listening to a word I've said. Our daughter, Karis, is staying here in the United States to attend university, attending Olivet Nazarene University, like her father. So she's made poor decisions her whole life, so it shouldn't be a surprise that she's decided to abandon this team. But if you want to talk to her and my wife, they'll be out there by the table. They can also give you information about the Nazarene response to the Ukraine crisis that is going on in Romania. More Ukrainian refugees were housed in our house in Brașov, Romania, just this weekend. And the Nazarene response over there has just been incredible. They can give you more information about that. Great chance to talk to them and talk to our daughter before she becomes considerably less important to us. Okay, enough of the nonsense. Let's talk about me. The beard is a fairly new thing for me. I grew it off and on since our time in Greece. We had a really cold winter there. Our pipes froze, they burst, and so we didn't have running water for a week. So I couldn't shave, and stuff started to grow. So I would let it grow during the winter, shave it off in the spring. And then all of a sudden we had a pandemic, and I decided, well, let's just let it grow and see what will happen. I noticed that when we were finally released from our prison homes there, that the beard gave me powers that I didn't have before. People started coming up to me on the streets and confessing their sins, as they do the bearded Orthodox priests that are there. Okay, well, not exactly, but I could tell that they wanted to. It's just that I have a face that says, no, thanks, I'm not interested. I also noticed that the boys who were interested in my daughter before the pandemic were all of a sudden terrified of me. So yeah, I was keeping it. But I especially noticed that children started to respond to me differently. We have a safe house for survivors of human trafficking in the Romanian capital of Bucharest, where these children, along with their mothers, live. We went there to see how they were doing during the pandemic. And as I walk in the door, this little boy here in the middle, Alex, he's there. He sees me walk in and he just stares at me. Now, I knew that he knew me or that he should know me. Either way, he shouldn't have wanted to kill me. And that was the look that he gave me. He sees me and he puts his head down and starts shuffling his feet, slowly making his way to me in the same creepy way that my mother-in-law does at 6 in the morning when she comes to visit us. He comes up to me, he looks at me in the face and whispers something. I don't hear him, don't understand him, so I ask him to repeat. He does, and I still can't understand what he's saying. So I get down on my knees facing him, eye to eye with the shy little beast, and I ask him again what he said. He looks at me and says, "Yesh Mosh Crăciun?" Are you Old Man Christmas? And so while I begin mentally drafting the letter that I'm going to write to the real Santa about how this kid deserves absolutely nothing, he just moves into the wish list portion of this visit. He says that he wants a drone. Nothing big, nothing fancy, just something that he can fly around the safe house. The same safe house filled with 15 women, 3 infants, and this group of small children. Now, I would love to give this kid a gift that makes everyone around him miserable, but I decided against it. I hope Alex is enjoying that priceless piece of coal instead. I mean, any kid his age can do just as much damage with that if he's talented, so here's hoping. You know, when I think about these kids, when I think about their moms, when I think about the people that our churches are ministering to over there in Romania, I think about how the pandemic has affected all of them differently. Now, some of them have really thrived during this time of limited contact, and others, like me, have really struggled. I think about the older women who attend our church in Bucharest, who come to the church for many reasons, but one of those reasons being to escape the abuse that they are facing at home. But then all of a sudden, a pandemic closes that door, and now they're trapped, victims of abuse. But then I think about our younger women who were victims of human trafficking before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, saw their slave quarters closed, giving them just enough time to escape. And now those young women are free, victims of abuse no longer. But then I think about our younger girls who are living up in northern Transylvania, who have always had the watchful eyes of those inside of the church to make sure that they were taken care of. And then when a pandemic closes that door, they do what many young Roma gypsy girls their age do when they run out of hope. They're married off to their teenage boyfriends. And now those little girls, too, are trapped, victims of domestic violence and lost childhoods. I want to tell you some of their stories. I want to tell you where we've seen God working, but also where we still need to see Him work. But more importantly, I want to introduce you to members of our family. And because they're members of my family, they are now members of your family, the family of God. I want to tell you the story of Anka. There in the town of Sigmandru, our church has a children's program that meets twice a week. Children from that community, they come together and they sing songs and they hear stories, they make crafts, and they eat a meal. Now, this group of kids, they sing songs at home, but they're not good songs. They hear stories at home, but they're not good stories. Sometimes they make things at home, but usually with dirty and broken things, and rarely do they eat a meal at home, which means that when they come to our church, this is probably the only meal that they are going to eat that day. Sigmandru is a poor community, a transient community. Many of the men of this village have left to go find work in other parts of Europe, and this wouldn't be so bad if they would just take the money that they earn and bring it back home to care for their families. But they don't. Most of the men in this town have stayed where they found work and have started second families there, leaving their wives home alone to take care of the house and take care of the kids. Now, I don't want to put the wrong image in your mind. One of a professional woman in her 20s or 30s who takes care of the house and takes care of the kids. Most of the moms that I am talking about are in their teens and not their late teens. Anka begins to come to our children's program there at the church. And she sings songs and she hears stories, makes a craft, eats a meal. We're sing songs about a God who loves her, hear stories about a Jesus who healed those around him, makes a craft and sneaks it into her home as a reminder that she has a family that loves her, cares for her, and prays for her. And she scarfs down that bowl of soup and a sandwich, a meal that she knows will never be waiting for her at home. But at least there's a family who cares for her. And then just like that, a pandemic closes that door. Anka turns 11 and she runs out of hope. She knows that there's no place for her anymore. You see, Anka at home is being beaten by her mother. She's also responsible for all the chores in the house. Anka's job is to wash everyone's clothes. And with no running water inside the home and little to no electricity, washing those clothes means gathering them up by hand, walking across the field into the runoff creek that is there, wading in into whatever filth is down there, and washing those clothes there. And it means doing it in the cold and frigid Transylvanian winters. But after the washing is done, there's cooking to be done. And after the cooking is done, there's cleaning to be done. And after the cleaning is done, there are siblings to be taken care of. And once the siblings are cared for, well, there's a beating to be had. Because somewhere between the washing and the cooking and the cleaning and the taking care of the other kids, there's always something that doesn't meet mom's satisfaction. But at least in the church, she's taken care of. But when that pandemic comes, there is no more hope. Anka turns 11. Decides that if she's going to be a slave, she might as well be one outside of her house. If she's going to be a servant, it might as well be to her own home. So she does what many young Roma gypsy girls her age do when they run out of hope. She's married off to her teenage boyfriend. At 11 years of age, Anka is a wife. And at almost 12, she is now a mother. A child who used to come to our children's program is now returning back to our church as part of the Mothers and Babies program. A program started by a church to help moms just like Anka fit into their new roles and take care of their new responsibilities. I want you to know that the church is still involved in Anka's life, just in a much different way, a more depressing way. You know, when I think about Anka, I see her there in the upper room with the rest of the disciples after the crucifixion of Jesus. They've had all of this time with the Son of God, and things have been going so incredibly well, and then just like that, it's all over. I picture them sitting at the table there in that room with Anka in the middle as the questions begin to swirl in their minds. Do they really think that it's all over? Don't they know that Sunday is coming? Don't they know that Jesus can't be contained? That he's walking this way? That he's right outside the door? And Anka, like the rest of the disciples, begins to realize that it's not that the story is over, it's just that a new chapter is starting. I want you to know that you are a part of that next chapter in Anka's life. It is because of your love and support of missions around the world that makes the work that your Nazarene brothers and sisters do thousands of miles away possible. The children's program that she was a part of before the pandemic, the Mothers and Babies program that she is a part of now, is only possible because of each and every one of you. Anka is your mission story. I want to tell you about Betty. Betty is different than a lot of the other girls that we ministered to. She came from a two-parent household. But this didn't help much. You see, Betty's father was an alcoholic, and he was a violent drunk at that. Betty is 11 years old when she sees her mom packing a suitcase. She gets excited because she believes for the first time they're going on a trip together. So she runs to her mom and she asks where they're going. Her mom says, "You're not going anywhere. I'm going. You're staying. I just can't take this anymore." And Betty doesn't understand why mom gets to leave this abusive house, but she has to stay. It doesn't take long for Dad to bring home a new girlfriend, and it doesn't take long for Betty to realize that this is going to be a fairy tale. Just the wrong kind. You see, Dad's new girlfriend is the storybook wicked stepmother. Things are about to get very hard for Betty. She comes home from school and she sees a stool sitting by the front door, and she wonders what that's for. Soon she finds out. Betty's new job is to come home, take off her backpack, set it on the floor, and then get on her knees facing the stool. And this is when Dad's girlfriend walks in. Betty's job is to take off her shoes and wash her feet. And then this woman proceeds to slam her foot into the top of Betty's head and scream in her ear, "Do you obey me?" Every single day for 4 years. Betty is finally old enough to work outside of the house, and oh man, she couldn't be more excited to leave. But at her first week at her new job, a young man begins to notice her. It's her laugh that gives her away, a laugh that is very innocent. This young man begins doing everything he can to try to separate her from her family. Well, based on what's going on at home, it doesn't take much, and by the end of that first week, Betty is being trafficked by this young man. But Betty is different than a lot of our other girls, as I said. Betty is a fighter. But when you fight, this comes at a cost. You see, the trafficker lives close to a self-serve car wash there in Romania, and it is a cold winter like many of our winters are. During the month of January, he goes out and he begins to spray water on the concrete slab there, letting it freeze, and then forces Betty to come out and sleep on that frozen pad all night long, the entire month of January. Betty becomes horribly ill. Word gets back to her father in town. He comes to get her, and she believes that she is finally saved, until her dad grabs her by the arm, takes her to an apartment, locks her in a room, never letting her leave. And then all of a sudden, there's a pandemic, giving Betty just enough time to escape. She gets out of that room, finding a way, runs to the phone, calls the police, and begins to sob as they ask her where she can go. She realizes there is no place for her. She can't stay in that room, locked and trapped forever, and she can't leave because her trafficker is out on the streets looking for her. There's no place for her to go. Until Open Door, Ușa, our safe house there in Bucharest, gets the call. When the police go in, they find that there are many girls who are being held there. One of them is Betty's best friend. But she doesn't want to come with Betty to our safe house. She wants to try to make it on her own. But Betty comes, and she is safe, and she is warm, and she is fed. But before her trafficker is caught, he finds Betty's best friend and kills her. It's in this house that Betty, for the first time, hears the story of Jesus Christ. She doesn't hear it from our Nazarene pastor because it's the pandemic and he's trapped at home. And she doesn't hear about Jesus from me. I'm trapped in my own home hours and hours away. She hears about Jesus from Kati, one of our other human trafficking survivors. A young lady who gave her heart to Christ when she first walked through these doors, and she has become the spiritual leader of this house. She begins to describe the transformation that Jesus has made in her life. And Betty, not even understanding the story, not even knowing all of it, decides it's just too good to be true. And there in that house, she gives her heart and life to Jesus Christ. Our church in Bucharest opens for 2 weeks before we are forced by the government to close again, and those 2 weeks are enough. As Betty says that she wants to be baptized into this new faith, that she wants to become a member of our family. You know, when I see Betty, I always picture her there on the shore of the sea with the rest of the Israelites. After being trapped in slavery for what seems like forever, they're finally free, yet just down the road, they find themselves trapped again. With certain death in front of them and the enemy pursuing them from behind, there's absolutely nowhere for them to go. I want you to know that Betty's rescue is not near as miraculous as the story of the Israelites with the parting of the sea and the walk on dry land. But please don't believe for a moment that it is any less important. With her trafficker behind bars, Betty comes to sing praises to the same God who rescued those Israelites so many years ago. I want you to know that that same God is rescuing slaves today. I also want you to know that you are a part of Betty's story. The home where she lives, the church where she worships. All of this is possible because of your love and support of missions around the world. Betty is your mission story. Tamea lives with her father and many other people in their house in Sigmandru. And their house is dirty, one of the dirtiest houses that I have ever been in. But Tamea's story is a sad one. She comes from a long line of sad stories. You see, Tamea's mom was a typical young gypsy girl without hope. 11 years of age, married to her 14-year-old boyfriend, almost immediately becomes pregnant and gives birth to a little baby boy, the boy that will one day grow up to be Tamea's older brother. But Tamea's mom is 11. She longs to do what other 11-year-old girls do. She wants to go outside and play, but knows that she needs to take care of this little baby boy in her arms. And with very thin walls and no floor to speak of in the house, it's almost as cold on the inside as it is on the outside. And there in that frigid winter, she begins to light a fire in the little iron stove that sits there in the corner. She lays her baby in front of that stove to keep it warm and then runs outside to watch the boys play in the field. Tamea's mom should have made sure that the fire took, but she didn't. She comes back into her house and finds her baby frozen to death on the floor. Tamea's mom ends up having 12 children and doesn't stick around to take care of any of them. Tamea grows up believing that since her mom left her, that there's no one who loves her. Until she starts walking those streets and hearing the other children talk. That there is a place just down the dirt road, the same dirt road that Anka walks, through that white iron fence, that there is a place where the children come. They come there to sing songs, hear stories, make crafts, eat a meal. Tamea does that, becomes a part of our children's program, hears about Jesus, then goes home to a house covered in walnuts. Walnuts that she is forced to spend the weekend searching for in the bear-infested woods of Transylvania. But at least she knows that there is a family who loves her and cares for her until a pandemic closes that door. Tamea, like Anka, runs out of hope, is married off to her teenage boyfriend. She becomes her mother, almost immediately becomes pregnant, and with the arrival of the baby comes the arrival of the abuse by her adolescent groom. We do have enough time to move her and the father of that child into a property owned by the church just down the road, where we can make sure that she is being taken care of, that she is safe and warm and fed. Yet every time I drive my car down this dirt road, I look over to my right at this building, to the second floor there, the apartment on the left, and I think there sits yet another child who before the pandemic was part of our children's program, but now comes back as part of our mothers and babies program. At least she knows there's a family who loves her. Out her window, she can see them right down that dirt road. Whenever I think about Tamea, I see her in the belly of the fish with Jonah, wondering how she got there, a victim of lost opportunities and ignored advice. But at least I understand Tamea just a little bit better A small 12-year-old girl who doesn't even look like she's 12 from a family of abuse and neglect is a lot different than a grown man running from his calling. Yet there they both sit, wondering how they got there, if they'll ever get a second chance. I want you to know that Tamaya will have a second chance. She's going to again have the opportunity to hear the story about the man who spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, and she's going to know exactly what he's feeling. But more importantly, she's going to hear again about the one who spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth, who died to give her new life, a life that she desperately needs and a hope that she is searching for. I want you to know that you are a part of Tamaya's story. The church where she worships, the Mothers and Babies program that she's a part of, now even the house that she lives in, is only possible because of each and every one of you. Tamaya is your mission story. One more. Roberta was 14 years old. 14 when she was trafficked. Abused not only by the trafficker, but by the trafficker's 2 brothers, his father, his grandfather, and his uncle. She was told, "You belong to us, and this abuse, this is your seal. You are ours." During this time, Roberta is forced to get 2 abortions, gets pregnant a 3rd time, and the trafficker just absolutely loses it. He begins to do everything he can to get Roberta to lose this baby. The first thing he does is strip her down and throws her out in the snow, and then runs out and dumps buckets of cold water on her head. Then runs back inside and watches from the window just to see what will happen. But Roberta lives, and the baby inside her lives. When that doesn't work, he calls up 10 of his friends to come over and abuse Roberta for 48 hours straight. And then she has to tell what each one of those guys did to her. But Roberta lives, and her baby lives. When that doesn't work, he begins to shove her into the corner of furniture there in the house, leaving marks and scars on her body that exist to this day. But Roberta lives, and her baby lives. She tries to escape, and there in the yard, the sister of the trafficker grabs her by her hair, drags her back inside. They tie her to a chair for 2 days. No food, no water, no bathroom breaks, but Roberta lives and her baby lives. Finally, it's time to give birth, but there is no break for Roberta. Even as she recovers from giving birth, she is forced to work in the fields during the day, and then her trafficker drives her to clients at night, never allowed to leave that house with her baby in her arms. She comes back from working in the fields one day, walks in the home, and notices that her baby is crying uncontrollably. So she begins to feed him, and that helps for a second. But as she begins to look down and study his little face, she notices that there's blood coming from the baby's mouth. She asked the trafficker what happened. "I don't know, I guess he rolled out of bed." She said, "He's 6 weeks old, he can't get up, he can't get out of bed. I have to take him to the hospital." "Then take him to the hospital." The trafficker scoffs. For the very first time, Roberta is able to walk out that door with her baby in her arms. They enter into the hospital, and it is clear from the moment they walk in to everyone working there that they are victims of abuse. Both of them are admitted into the hospital, but only one of them is released. It's found that Roberta's baby has a fractured skull, and pieces of his skull are lodged in his brain. That little baby goes in and out of a coma for a while, but it ends up being just too much for his little body to handle. Roberta comes to us, to our safe house, and the first thing that she has to do is bury her newborn baby boy. But for the first time, surrounded by women who knew exactly what she was going through. It's there in that house that Roberta hears the story about a God who loves her, about a Jesus who died for her, about a Holy Spirit who will never leave her, and not knowing how any of this is possible with everything that she's experienced in her life, she simply decides that this is the story for her. During the same 2 weeks that Betty is baptized, Roberta asked to be baptized as well, professing her newfound faith in Jesus Christ and again becoming a member of our family. You know, when I see Roberta, I picture her there in the prison cell of Joseph in Genesis 39. After being sold into slavery by those who were supposed to love him most, Joseph is somehow able to show the love of God to those that God brings into his path. And I want you to know that Roberta is able to do the exact same thing. She walks into our safe house and she sees this little guy. This is Michael, Nicoletta's baby. And Nicoletta's story will have to wait for another day. Nicoletta's family wants Michael to be baptized in the Orthodox Church because they are part of that tradition. The problem is that they are a part of Nicoletta's trafficking story. They helped to sell her. When Roberta hears this, she says, look, I don't want your family, I don't want you to have to go to your family. I don't want them to be involved. So if it's important for Michael to be baptized in the Orthodox Church, then I want to do it. I want to pay for the church. I want to pay for the candles. I want to pay for the flowers. And Nicoletta is so confused. Why do you want to do all of this for my son, she asks. Roberta says, I want to do for your baby boy what I can't do for mine. Those two young women join hand in hand, walk out of the safe house through the security gate, down the road to the first Orthodox church they come to. They tell their story, and the church is so blessed by it that they offer to cover all the costs and even call in the choir to sing. Just days after burying the son of one, those women come together to celebrate the birth and baptism of another. I want you to know that you are a part of Roberta's story. The house where she lives, the services that are provided to her, the church where she worships. All of these are possible because of your love and support of missions around the world. Roberta is your mission story. Our story is changing a bit too as we have finished up our time in Transylvania, Romania, and we'll be moving to Florence, Italy at the end of August. I want you to pray for those people that God has brought into our path in Romania. Pray for those that he's already ministering to in the country that we will soon call home. But I want you to remember to pray for members of your family and know that people are coming to a knowledge of who Jesus is because of your love and support of missions around the world. I always say that there's nothing special about what my family of four does. We do what you do, just an ocean away. So keep being the hands and feet of Jesus here. And we will do what you do, just a little further from home. I want to end with a video. I want you to see what this looks like from our perspective, a first-person view of what it looks like when people are saved. When they're coming to a knowledge of who Jesus is, when they're rescued from slavery, when they are loved on by the community of faith. And I want you to know that these stories are not my stories. These stories are your stories. God bless you.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen, I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true. I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true. I will rescue you. I hear the whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true. I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true. I will rescue you. Oh, I will rescue you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. We're humbled today by your call and how God is using you. I'm going to ask the Herndons if they'll go out so they can be at the table, so they can greet you here in just a moment before we close in prayer. Prayer is a big thing. Sometimes we go through the routine. But we've been praying around here for 14 days, and this next week is our last week of this concentrated 21 days of prayer. I think we have a new insight to another area that God is working. Even tomorrow, on Memorial Day, each day at 6:30 and noon, you can gather and pray. Let's end our service this morning in prayer. Father, thank you for the call that you put on the lives of each and every one of us. But in this call to go far and serve in the midst of the world situations and all the things that go on, we are thankful today that we've had a glimpse to know that you are in control. Thank you for this family and so many other families that serve us as a part of the Church of the Nazarene.